Story 1: The Mirror Room. I never believed in cursed objects until I moved into that creaky old house on Elmwood Lane. I'd rented it cheap, far too cheap for the size. The landlord, a wiry old man with trembling hands, had avoided my eyes when I asked about the price. "It's just, some people find it unsettling," he muttered. I shrugged it off. A bargain's a bargain, right? The house was strange, room after room connected by endless hallways, but what caught my eye was the room at the end of the second-floor corridor. The door was heavy and warped, the paint peeling in long strips like curling skin. Inside, the walls were covered in mirrors, every surface, every inch, ceiling to floor. It wasn't a reflection you could look away from. No matter where I turned, I could see myself, staring, blinking, always there. At first, I thought the room was just eccentric. Old houses are full of quirks, I told myself. But then, the mirrors started feeling wrong. It began small, subtle, almost imperceptible. I'd step into the room and my reflection would lag, just for a split second. My arm would move, but the reflection was always just slower. Sometimes I'd catch a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye, a shadow that didn't match my own, a grin that lingered too long after I stopped smiling. I should have stopped going in, but the room had this pull, like it wanted me there. Night after night, I'd find myself standing in the center, surrounded by endless versions of myself, each one slightly off. One night, I leaned in close to one of the mirrors, so close my breath fogged the glass. That's when I saw it. My reflection blinked, but I hadn't. I stumbled back, heart racing, but my reflection stayed where it was, leaning in, smiling. It wasn't me anymore. It wasn't even human. The eyes were too wide, the teeth too sharp. It mouthed something, its lips moving soundlessly against the glass. I bolted from the room, slamming the door behind me, but the sound of shattering glass chased me down the hallway. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw its face, my face, grinning at me from behind the glass. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was stress. Maybe the old house was getting to me. I decided to get rid of the mirrors. I grabbed a hammer and went back into the room, ready to smash every last one of them. But the mirrors weren't there anymore. The room was empty, just 4 blank walls and a thick layer of dust on the floor. I stood there, confused, until I saw it. My reflection wasn't in the mirrors because it was in the window behind me, smiling, watching, waiting. The sleeping roommate. My college roommate, Jessica, was always a little odd, quiet, withdrawn. She didn't really talk to me much, which was fine. I wasn't there to make friends. But there was one thing about her that really creeped me out. Jessica never slept in her bed. Every night, she'd grab her pillow and blanket and sleep on the floor. She never explained why. I asked her once, and she just shrugged, muttering something about feeling safer down there. I didn't push it. We all have our quirks, right? But then I started noticing things. Small at first, like how her bed was always perfectly made, the sheets tucked so tightly they might as well have been glued down, or how she'd never ever let me sit on it. "Don't touch the bed," she snapped one day when I plopped down on the edge. Her voice was low, almost pleading. "Please." It made no sense. But what really got to me was the sound. Every night after she turned out the lights, I'd hear something. A creaking noise, soft at first, like the bed frame shifting under someone's weight. I'd tell myself it was just the old wood settling. Except it wasn't. The sound would grow louder, more deliberate, until I swore I could hear breathing. Low, raspy, in and out. But Jessica was always on the floor, curled up in her blanket, dead asleep. One night, I'd had enough. I decided to confront her about it. As soon as the lights went out and the sounds started, I turned on my phone's flashlight and shone it straight at the bed. The creaking stopped instantly. Jessica stirred but didn't wake up. I felt brave or stupid, so I stepped closer, my light trained on the bed. Nothing moved, just a neatly made blanket and the faint smell of lavender fabric softener. I laughed at myself, shaking my head. "You're losing it," I whispered. Then the bed moved. Not the blanket, not the pillow. The bed itself shifted, just slightly, as if something heavy had settled into it. My flashlight flickered, and for a split second, I swear I saw it. A shape. A dark, twisted form hunched beneath the covers. Its face was pressed into the fabric, staring right at me through the sheet. I screamed, and Jessica shot up from the floor, wide-eyed and pale. "You saw it, didn't you?" she whispered. I couldn't speak. couldn't breathe. She grabbed my arm, her fingers like ice. I told you not to touch the bed. We didn't sleep that night. Jessica stayed on the floor, trembling, while I sat frozen in the corner, my eyes glued to the bed. By morning, I packed my things and moved out. I don't know what it was, but sometimes when I close my eyes, I hear that breathing again, low, raspy, in and out, and I wonder if whatever it was followed me. Story 3. The Figure at the Door. It started with a knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks at my front door just after midnight. I live alone in a small cabin deep in the woods, so I wasn't expecting visitors. At first, I thought it was the wind or an animal, but the knocks came again. Louder, more deliberate. I grabbed a flashlight and peeked through the window, but there was nothing out there. Just the dense, dark woods stretching endlessly in every direction. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. The knocks continued every night after that, always at the same time, 12:03 a.m. They were slow, deliberate, and rhythmic, like a pulse. I tried ignoring them, but it was impossible to sleep with that sound echoing through the house. One night, I decided I'd had enough. When the knocking started, I yanked open the door, flashlight in hand, ready to scare off whoever or whatever was messing with me. There was no one there, just the night. But when I stepped outside, I saw them. Footprints. Large, barefoot impressions leading away from my porch and into the woods. They didn't belong to any animal I knew. I followed the footprints, heart pounding, flashlight trembling in my hand. They led deeper and deeper into the forest until I reached a clearing I'd never seen before. In the center of the clearing was a tree, a massive, ancient thing with roots twisting into the earth like skeletal fingers. Hanging from one of its branches was a crude, human-shaped figure made of sticks and rope. That's when I saw it. Standing at the edge of the clearing, just beyond the beam of my flashlight, was a figure. It didn't move, it didn't speak, it just stood there, watching me with hollow, unblinking eyes. I ran. I don't even remember how I got back to the cabin, but the knocking started again the moment I slammed the door shut. This time it was faster, louder. The sound of something pounding on the walls, the windows, the roof. I don't know what it wants, but it hasn't stopped. Every night, the knocking gets closer, louder. I've barricaded the doors and windows, but I can still hear it. Last night, it came from inside the house, and tonight, it's knocking on my bedroom door.